Welcome to the Shenmue AM2 podcast.
Welcome to the premiere edition of the Shenmue AM2 podcast, starring myself, Andrew Letson, and my co-host,
Matt Humphrey. I am the M in the M2.
I am the A in the AM, and there's two of us. Pretty
Makes
easy
sense.
name. Makes sense.
We're geniuses.
A lot of work in that one. So, again, as I mentioned, this is the premiere episode, and what we're here to do is hopefully, for a long time, there are many, many episodes, have a Shenmue podcast. Talk about the game, talk about what we like, what we dislike, Kickstarter, and just different topics every episode. So I think we should start out with, who we are, why we're here. So both Matt and I live in St. John, New Brunswick, Canada.
No one's ever heard of this place.
Never. Matt and I actually went to high school together. I think we only had one or two classes.
I don't remember this at all.
Together we had some media studies class or something, and just kind of hay in the hallway type thing. But then Matt and I had an encounter in a grocery store, which, as weird as that sounds, we'll get to that. But that's why we're here, is to talk about Shenmue. Lately, Matt and my wife actually work together, so that's how we still know each other.
No, it's a good thing that I do work with your wife, because we had that chance encounter at the grocery store, and it would have been forever missed connection if not for your wife and I working together. So you want to explain what happened at the grocery store?
So my wife and I are in a grocery store, and I can't remember what we were buying. Doesn't really matter, but my wife and I were separated for a moment. And I just happened to see, I see Matt and his wife walking through the grocery store, and at this point, I am not with my wife. She, I think, went to use the washroom or something, and I see Matt is wearing a Shenmue jacket.
It's a replica of Ryo Hazuki's jacket.
And from afar, I was a ways away. I didn't say anything to him, and there's not a lot of things I would change in my life, but if I could change that moment, I definitely would have said something. So a few days later, I'm at my work, and my wife's at her work, and I emailed her, and I'm like, ask Matt if he was wearing a Shenmue jacket, and I'll let Matt take it from here.
Well, yeah, she asked me that, and I was like, yeah, and she's like, I think my husband saw you wearing it at the grocery store. He's a big Shenmue fan. I was like, oh, I had no idea. That's cool. So that's how we found each other. But yeah, if we didn't have your wife to go through, then you just would have been like, I think that guy's wearing a Shenmue jacket. Oh, I should say something. He's gone. Oh, goodbye, friend.
I don't know what I would have said either. It would have been some line from the game. Probably would have been just walk over and be like, don't you know that blackmail's way uncool?
That would have been great. I mean, I specifically wore the jacket trying to lure in Shenmue fans. Why else would I have it? I want somebody to approach me and say, hey, is that Shenmue?
Wasn't that luring in Shenmue fans? Wasn't that a show on NBC to catch a Mad Angel or something?
Yes, I think so. It never works. Actually, no. A few months ago, I was wearing the jacket again, and I was eating alone in a KFC, and this guy I saw in my peripheral vision, he went behind me, and he stood directly behind me where my Ryo Hazuki tiger was pointing out, and I just heard a camera phone go off. And I don't know if this guy took a picture to make fun of me, or if he's like, oh man, that's a Shenmue jacket, I could take a picture of this. I'll never know. Misconnection, maybe.
Do you work with his wife?
Nope. But that was an odd moment. But yeah, those are the only two instances where my jacket did anything for me. All the other times I just feel cool when I'm wearing it. Yeah, what else? I should probably say why we like Shenmue?
Yeah, I got introduced to it. I think Matt and I have different ways that we were introduced to the game. I just was at my sister's house, and I saw her boyfriend playing it, and it wasn't even that I was interested. It was just I was trying to have a conversation with her, and again, out of the peripheral vision, I see him getting off a bus. And
Ryo Hazuki?
Yeah, I see Ryo Hazuki getting off a bus.
That never happened in video games back then, people getting off of buses.
No. And then I see him racing a forklift in what appears to be a port. And then I see him actually moving crates, and then I see him on his lunch break playing darts and getting balls out of a vending machine, and then he's talking to a homeless person, and then he's working again. And I had never encountered a video game like that in my life. And this whole time I'm still trying to have a conversation with my sister, and I had to stop talking to her and just address this such an odd game that my sister's boyfriend at the time was playing, and I've been hooked ever since.
What year was that?
It was shortly before Shenmue 2 was released.
Okay. So you didn't get in on the ground floor. Like
no.
Me. I saw it in magazines leading up to it. Like, I would always have EGMs and Game Pros and stuff, and I'd always see previews and screenshots and like features on it, just describing what it was going to be. So I started getting excited and anticipating it, and this was before the internet, so the only thing I had to go on was magazines. But I don't remember knowing the release date of many games back then, but I knew the release date of this one, and I anticipated it, and I waited till it came out, and I bought it on launch day, and I brought it home, and I was so excited. I was like convinced this was going to change video games. I'd never played a second of it, and I'm like, entire family, come downstairs and watch me play this game that's going to revolutionize video games. And they sat down and they watched the opening cutscene with me, and then I was given free reign to go about, and I walked Ryo Hazuki. I proceeded to walk Ryo Hazuki to every neighbor's door and try to talk to all the neighbors, because I think I had read that you could talk to everybody. So I was just like, perhaps they're out next door. You know, whatever else he says, is anybody home? Or no one's home. And my family got bored and they left. Because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I was so disappointed. I was like, this false advertising. But then I figured eventually I figured you're not supposed to knock on all the doors. You're supposed to talk to the people you see. I think occasionally if you knock on a door, somebody will crack one open and they'll tell you to go away, basically.
Yeah, there's definitely my last playthrough, or my current playthrough of Shenmue 1, there's definitely people that just crack the door open.
Or they talk through the door or something.
Yeah, there's a couple in the apartments when you are in Yamanose, I think it is. There's some people that will crack the door open and just say that they're going to bed or something.
Anyways, yeah. So I didn't make a very good first impression of Shenmue with my family, but yeah, I've got good memories of exploring that game and figuring out how it works. And I associate Shenmue with winter because I played it in the winter. What day did it come out? Do you know the release? Was it in December or what?
Don't remember the release date off the top of my head.
Let's look it up. November 8th, 2000 is when it came out. So, yes, I associate it with the winter time, and I played it right up, through Christmas holidays and stuff. So, I always get the urge to play this game every time Christmas holidays are coming up.
Yeah, for what I remember with first playing it at my sister's house, I think it was, or seeing it and then playing it, I think it was summertime, because again, it was shortly before the release date of Shenmue 2, which is another... My encounter with Shenmue 2 was such a chance situation. I had read in a magazine at, we're in Canada here, at a Zeller's, which doesn't even exist anymore.
Poor Zeller's restaurant. That was a good place.
Zeddy the Bear. Shout out to Zeddy the Bear if he's listening. I had read in a magazine that Shenmue 2 for the Dreamcast was not coming to North America, and I remember just being so bummed out about it. And my sister's boyfriend he got an Xbox when they launched, and Shenmue 2 was coming to the Xbox. So for a Christmas present for him, I was going to get him the player's guide. So I went to my local electronics boutique at the time, and I'm in line holding the player's guide in my hand, and I'm ready to pay for it. And when I walk up to the counter, this was the EB in our mall has totally changed, but there was a glass case behind the counter, and the gentleman who's waiting on me, I hand him the player's guide, and I'm about to get out money to pay for it. And out of the corner of my eye, I just see a white Dreamcast logo. Mm-hmm. And then the wording on the box underneath of it is sideways, and I literally cock my head to the side, and I see Shenmue 2. And I immediately my right arm just whips out, and I'm pointing right at it. I said, "What's that?" And the fellow working, his name was Scott, he said, "That's Shenmue 2 for the Dreamcast." And I said, "I'll take it." I didn't ask the price. I didn't care about the price. It was mine. So I had paid for it. They did sell, back in the day, EB sold boot discs. I think it was called Boot X or something. And he told me not to worry about it because he had a boot disc for it. The gentleman that was waiting on me, it was his personal copy that he had imported and then sold to the store as a copy. He sold it into the inventory as a copy of Shenmue 2 for the Xbox. So he said come back the next day, so I went back the next day to get the boot disc from him, and he said he didn't have it anymore, but he knew a guy that could make some. So he sent me down to the same mall, Toys R Us, and that guy said he could make me a boot disc and come back tomorrow. So I went back, and I was gonna, I think he said it was like $10 or something to make one. So I went back to Toys R Us. He said he couldn't make them anymore, and I said, well, I need something to do it. What can you do for me? And he sold me a Game Shark for $69.99 from Toys R Us.
Is that retail price, or did he rip you off?
No, that was retail price.
Okay.
And again, after owning this game and having it sit in my house for 2 days, I needed to play it. And I remember getting home, the whole car ride home, it was my buddy. I ran into him at the mall, and his aunt drove us home. And I was just praying that it would be in English. And it wasn't, but it did have the English subtitles, so I could still play it. So I was still happy.
So that was the European Dreamcast version.
Yes, the PAL.
2. Yeah, which, I also heard about it being cancelled, which I attributed to Sony killing Dreamcast with their PS2, and I vowed to never forgive Sony, and I never did until 2 years ago when I bought a PS4. But so I held a grudge for a long time against Sony for killing the Dreamcast, and most likely Shenmue 2. So I heard about EB was going to be importing the game for anybody who wanted it. They'd be importing the European version for Dreamcast. And so I plucked down the over $100 to do that. I got that on release day too, or whenever they had it available first day. And I'm pretty sure if you pre-ordered it, it came with the boot disc.
It did come with a boot disc if you pre-ordered it at EB.
Yeah.
I did some research on it, but it was over $100.
I believe so. I think it was like $112, or just over $100.
And that was back in 2001,
something like that. Yeah.
So
I could be remembering it wrong, but I would pay that again.
In a heartbeat.
Yeah.
In a Heartbeats bar. Shout out to Heartbeats Bar.
So yeah, that's our Shenmue 1 and 2 stories. Should we tell our Shenmue 3 stories, or we don't have that game yet? But
no, I think we should save that for another episode.
Okay.
Because again, I think our Shenmue 3 stories are relatively different as well. I think Matt's was more calm, cool, and collective, and I was definitely more Michael P. Huber-like in my basement, ranting like a lunatic.
I wish I'd seen it. So.
My wife got to see it, and I'm glad she did, because she, in that moment, because I always kind of talked about Shenmue and how much I really loved it as a video game, and I say loved, I love that game, and I don't think she, necessarily understood, to no fault of her own, but I think that moment put it in context for her.
Yeah, to show that your extreme feelings are genuine towards this game. But, so why do you like this game so much? What do you like about it?
It was different. I hadn't played anything like it. I hadn't seen anything like it. It played well. The combat in it was great. The music, when there's a day in the game where something's going to happen. When you get to Debuita, that music's it's different that day. The pacing is very deliberate. The fact that you could play Master System games in it. The fact that you had a Sega Saturn in your house. The fact that you could go to stores, you could, buy things, do raffles, feed a kitten. It was so different. And everyone in that game, every single character mattered. Everyone had their story. And that's what really did it for me. What put the hooks in you?
I've been a big fan of anime and all things Japan for a long time, and this game is the closest I've ever come to feeling like I've been to Japan. And it felt like I was living in Japan those first few months when I was playing it in the winter of 2000. And mostly it's just atmosphere. No game before this had ever created a realistic, lived-in atmosphere like this game had, and with believable people living in the game, not just characters, not just polygons. They felt like people. I still remember the first time I followed somebody around for a whole day. I caught them leaving their house in the morning, and then I wonder where this person's going. And they went to their shop and opened it up, and I just sat around, watched them all day. They took their lunch break, went back to work, then they went home. Same place they came out of in the morning. I was like, that's amazing. And then every character does that basically.
And that's a good way to put it. I really like how you said they were just polygons in other games. Comparing it to, say, another fantastic game, and again in my top 5, Ocarina of Time. Say Kakariko Village. All those villagers, you can talk to them, but they're polygons. They don't. Sure, each of them might have a little part in the game where you talk to them to advance the story or something, but they don't have their own life. And that's what Shenmue. Everyone has their own life. Everyone matters. Everyone is different. Everyone
feels like they've lived there for a long time, and Ryo knows them, and they know him, and it just feels like a lived-in world. That's one of the things I like. I like the first game better than the second because of that. Basically, I know the second one is going for the feeling of making you feel like a stranger in a strange land, that's the point, but I don't like that as much. I like the intimate community in the first one, where Ryo grew up, basically,
I'm in the same camp.
Yeah.
I am a big fan of, again, both are absolutely fantastic games, and I think they're both 10s out of 10. But the first one I do prefer, just because it feels more quaint.
Yeah.
You get a lot of, hi, Dio, people specifically addressing you. And in the second one, you don't have that. And again, it's intentional. But it's building upon the story, and it's obviously meant to be a bigger, broader game. But the first one definitely has that. I don't know. It almost feels like a community, and because it is a community and it's designed to be that way.
Yeah, and plus it's the Japanese versus the Chinese aesthetic for me. I'm more fascinated with Japan, which kind of makes me sad going forward in Shenmue, because I'm pretty sure he's never going back there. But
no, I don't think he will. I don't think he will be back there.
Yeah.
But we do have on the Kickstarter. If you're a certain level, you do have those phone calls.
You can call home.
You can call home.
You mentioning you doing your Dio impression there reminds me we should talk about the dub versus the original voices at some point. Not this episode, but another time. I'll probably end up playing those Ryo Hazuki prank calls and stuff on the podcast.
Terry.
Yeah.
No, those the prank calls are funny if you're listening. Just YouTube.
Don't look them up yet. I'll play them for you on another episode.
Yeah.
If you haven't heard them. Yeah. What else should we do in this inaugural episode? Should we go through our collections, or should we save that? Or?
I think our collections could be an entire episode, because we both have pretty different collections.
Yeah.
What's in them. And I think they're both, or at least I know for myself, I plan on growing mine a little bit, piece by piece, every year. There's a couple pieces out there that I would like to have that I don't right now. Like a sample Japanese copy.
Yeah. So this is pretty much the end of the first episode here. We just wanted to introduce ourselves and share a few memories, but going forward, we're going to try to do a few different things, but one of the main things we're going to do is we're going to start a new playthrough of the game, and we're probably going to go disc by disc, and so we'll do one disc, we'll each get to the end, we'll take some notes as we play, and about stuff we've encountered, and then we'll compare notes on the next episode, and then we'll continue on to the next disc and do that again until we get through both games. We've got other things we want to do. We might maybe highlight some NPCs with interesting backstories, because every single NPC in the game has a full fleshed out backstory, which again,
Sega didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
That was, to my knowledge, the first game where literally every single person had a background.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that adds to the charm of the game. But yeah, that's something that we're looking in and doing. Talking, like, ideally we want to have the format to be talk about where we are in the playthrough, compare, contrast notes, and then have a topic as well each episode.
Yeah.
Something about the game, whether it be the Kickstarter, what our thoughts were when Shenmue Online was announced way back in the day. I definitely had mixed feelings about that, but that's where we want to go with this podcast.
Yeah, there is one more thing I wanted to mention. I forgot when I was talking about the sense of presence and in the first game. I've never had anything like I've heard stories of like kids playing D&D for so long that they like their brains got all messed up and they thought they were their characters and they walked out in front of a car or something in a daze. I've never had anything like that in my life except for in Shenmue. I don't know if I played it for extra long or if I just got so engrossed in it that I played Shenmue for a bit, and then I went out with my family for a drive, and I wasn't driving, I was in the passenger seat, and there was a group of seagulls on the road, and we were driving towards them, and if I had been driving, I would have smushed all those seagulls. I would have driven straight through them, because in my brain, you can't touch them, they're going to fly away, right? You approach them. Like my brain was in Shenmue mode. Like, because Rio, if you run Rio straight towards a flock of seagulls, they all disperse before he gets there. But I would have been a seagull murderer if I had been driving. That's the power of this game. That's how engrossed you can get. But,
here in St. John, New Brunswick, we could afford to be short a few seagulls.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So those were our plans going forward. And I guess we'll see you next time. I'm not sure how often we'll do these. Do we want to do it once every few weeks, once a month? What?
No idea.
Not commit to a schedule?
Not commit to a schedule, I think is good for now, until we get a few episodes under our belt.
I mean, we've got a long time till Shenmue 3. I'm positive it's not going to make December 2017. But.
Don't say that, Matt. But
just being realistic.
I know, I totally wholeheartedly agree. But even if it got delayed, say December 2018, 1 year more is a drop in the bucket of 16 years.
Yeah. Right.
I'm willing to wait for a polished product.
Yep, as long as I don't get hit by a car before then or something,
And that's something we will talk about. Not Matt getting hit by a car, but I actually, a couple months ago, almost did pass away. So
oh, geez.
We'll talk about that and how that was one of my things where when I was at the hospital, I'm like, hey, I almost didn't make it to Shenmue 3.
This can't happen. I'm hanging on for Shenmue 3. So we'll get to that story and more next time. This episode has been brought to you by Jet Cola.
Jet Cola. It's good.
See you, everyone.
Bye.